Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we are playing Death Shadow, which has recently got some new technology that I'm excited to get to grips with. That technology being Stalactite Stalker. So this is a 1 mana 1/1 menace. At the beginning of your end step, if you descended this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So descended is when a permanent card is put into your graveyard from anywhere. So Wastelands, fetch lands, or cycling a Street Wraith, a Grief, you know, these are all things that work, which is what we're trying to accomplish here. So what I like about this is my problem with Death Shadow has often been that it takes a while to get a threat on board. So it's not actually that good at clocking. It takes a few turns of control, then it makes a creature that can do stuff. And I always liked the older builds a long time ago where it used to run Delver. And this is kind of like our new sort of pseudo Delver, and it kind of synergizes with what we sort of morphed into these days with, you know, the Griefs and things. So we are a more tempo-y Death Shadow deck because we have an additional threat here that can come down early. So we've got Street Wraith and Grief, which can go into our graveyard and get reanimated. We've got a pretty thick reanimation package with the 4 Street Wraiths and the 3 Griefs here. We've got a couple of Snuff Outs because that obviously enables our Death Shadow. We've also got Bowmasters as threats. We have 1 Borrower, and we have these 2 Murktides, which are obviously going to be large and in charge when the time comes. Everything else is kind of as you'd expect. We've got counter spells, we've got cantrips, and we've got Wastelands in the mana base. We've got 2 Underground Seas, 3 Watery Graves, and then just fetches. So yeah, I'm just curious to see how this Stalactite Stalker plays out. This is my first chance to actually have a go with this. I'm brewing some other decks involving this as well. So I'm going to see how it plays today and go from there. But this is kind of a deck that has picked up in the last week or two, with a lot of people jamming almost this exact deck list, maybe like with 1 card different here and there. So it's definitely putting up some numbers already. Sideboard wise, we've got a whole different smattering of stuff. You know, we've got some artifact hate, some graveyard hate, an island for matchups where we need to make sure we can cast things like Hydroblast underneath the Blood Moon. We've got, you know, Hullbreacher to go alongside our Bowmaster plan here. Just the sort of stuff you'd expect. We've also got Fatal Push to blow some creatures away. You know, Dress Down for Ezra Saga. More counter magic in Force of Negation. Just everything you'd expect, really. We're essentially a deck that can find 1 or 2 ofs in our deck because we have a lot of cantrips. So we can try and dig our way towards what we need. And we have game into most things because, you know, we're a counterspell deck. We don't have any main deck hand disruption, which is interesting. We don't even have any sideboard hand disruption outside of these Griefs. So 3 Grief is hand disruption, but it's not as reliable in my opinion as something like a Thoughtseize, because obviously this is a resource high card and we only have 3 of them, whereas previous version of Death Shadow would run the full 4 Thoughtseize. Obviously it reduces your life total for the purposes of Death Shadow, but what I will say is Grief is better in the mid to late game once you actually get up to that 4 mana, which we can do because we're cantripping, so getting up to 4 mana isn't impossible for us, even though we're only a 17 land deck. Alright, that's the deck. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's try some Stalactite Stalker in Death Shadow. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past, so why not give them a try? Alright, what does our opener do? We're going to be doing some pondering. We have double Reanimates, which isn't great, but we have 7 hits that can turn this into something better. I think we can keep this one, although I'm a little skeptical. Right, we're going to keep it. I think having the Force of Will blue card is nice, but if we go to our turn without drawing another blue card, we might be in a situation where we have to decide about letting down our shields temporarily while we ponder looking for another blue card, or we can just hold the ponder. Alright, if our opponent's a Prismatic Vista deck, they're likely to be playing the game at a slightly slower pace, so I think we can afford to go shields down on the... Alright, this is just excellent. This is exactly what we wanted now. Alright, so let's get a land into play first. And then we will Grief, exiling a Reanimate. And we get to take 2 cards from our opponent's hand whilst holding up Force of Will blue card. Not too shabby. Let's see what our opponent's got for us here. Okay. Omniscience, Flusterstorm, Force of Will, Emrakul the Aeon's Torn. Interesting. So if we take the Flusterstorm here, if they want to Force of Will, they have to pitch Omniscience to do it. And that's pretty reasonable to me. So you crack this, and we'll get a Watery Grave. Pay 2 life here. We want to get our Shadow up and running as soon as possible, really. So if they want to Force of Will this, they're going to lose Omniscience and be down to nothing, apart from his Emrakul in hand. Alright, so they decided to let us have a crack at their hand. I think the play here is to take the Omniscience. That's the scariest of those things, really. Force of Will without a blue card doesn't do much. We're down to 13 already, so next turn we can deploy their Shadow. Let's go attacks. Get in a little bit of damages. Let's drop her land, give it a little crack, and go and find ourselves another Watery Grave here. We will pay the 2 life because we want to make our Shadow big. We want to be clocking as much as we can. And we'll leave open... We could try and ponder, but what would we be pondering for? Like maybe a Daze? But if our opponent's got Daze, and they're not going to have that many cards anyway... Alright, I've convinced myself to ponder here, actually. Just in case you can find a Daze or another Force of Will. Is pretty reasonable. You just want to lock this game up with Force of Wills, I think. Alright, so Force of Will blue card, as well as untapping into another Force of Will. So if you have to fire off the Force of Will this turn, then we still have Force of Will blue card next turn. So I'm pretty happy with our spot here. Cracking for 6, which isn't enormous damages, but it's not nothing either. So this is a 3-turn clock. Our opponent's got 2 mystery cards in hand. They could have... They could be deploying their combos, so this could be an intuition at end of turn. An impulse. Okay, I think that's fine. This isn't our fight. Right, they're cracking the Misty Rainforest. Are they a green build? Because sometimes they splash green for Veil of Summer and Carpet Flowers. Right, so this is going to be a show and tell. We're going to say no to this one. Does our opponent have Force of a blue card here? They do. But we have another force. This is going to grow our Shadow now to being quite large. And that's the game. Sure. Make a threat, disrupt our opponent, job done. So, how do I feel about this matchup? I think Force of Negation is going to be an important one here. I'm not really sure Snuff Out is where I want to be. That's not going to do very much. Hullbreacher is okay. That's slowing down some of their bits and pieces. I think that's probably about where we're at. The other option is the cheese strat of playing Dauthi Voidwalker and then messing with their hand to try and put an Emrakul underneath this, and we just cast Emrakul and win the game that way. That's kind of an interesting idea. Also another Borrower, so we can bounce an Omniscience that gets into play if they can't. So if they go to cast like a Brainstorm, we bounce the Omniscience, but things are already kind of going wrong in that situation. So I'm not sure that's where I want to be. I guess we can probably trim 1 Daze, although our opponent's going to be trying to put multiple things on the stack in a turn quite often, like the show and tell plus some sort of protection, so the Daze is actually still going to be relevant there. So I think it's just the Hullbreacher and the Force. The Hullbreacher is nice because it slows down their ability to draw extra cards. So we'll try like this. Dress Down is okay, but it's kind of treading water after you've already lost, really. And that's not good enough. Like, you can stop an Atraxa if they're putting that in, but they're most likely to be fully into like Omniscience. Alright, so these Wastelands aren't really where I want to be, so we can mulligan this one. I said these Wastelands aren't where I want to be. This is acceptable. I said we don't want the Wasteland. And 2, 3, 4, 5. We're ways off of Death Shadow right now. So this hand is not good enough to win this game. But I don't really want to go to 4 cards here. A Leyline of Sanctity. So we're not going to be able to hit them with much hand disruption here. And our Orcish Bowmasters, not going to be so great. Hullbreacher still can do its thing. So we're going to see a Ponder. Yep, there it is. I don't feel good about this game. They did not shuffle their library. So we have this Grief that we can't do anything with. I think we just put this in tapped. We could be paying some life towards a Death Shadow, but also being able to survive a single hit from an Emrakul could end up being useful. Unlikely, though. I think we're just going to get smashed up pretty good here. So we do have to hit ourselves with a Bowmaster because of their Leyline of Sanctity. And our Bowmaster can grow, but it won't be able to ping them while it's growing. Because we're not offering any pressure here, our opponent can just kind of play at whatever speed they like here. Okay. I think for this one we will get a Watery Grave and pay. Just going to poke ourselves for 1 here. This means that this fetch land can turn on a shadow relatively easily. Because we have the Bowmasters to ping for the other point of damage. If we're in that sort of situation. Alright, let's go to attacks. We're going to see an Intuition or an Impulse here at end step, I think. Feels like an Intuition. Cunning Wish. Yep, what are you going to reveal? An Intuition. Alright, so we're doing it slowly over here. But I think it's still going to be good enough because we can't really interfere with our opponent on any sort of meaningful level here. We'll pay the life now. I think we're just in for it. Let's just play the Hullbreacher. Just get a little Merfolk Pirate on the go. An Impulse, sure. So still holding up this Intuition for our end step as well. We're doing all we can do, which is attacking our opponent for a bunch. This is an interesting one. So the Ancient Tomb, we want our opponent to tap the Ancient Tomb because we need them to take damage. We'll take them off of green. This will at least make them fear for counter spells. Right, so no Intuition at our end step. Or in response to the Wasteland. That's interesting. Does that mean they don't need it and they're just going to go off this turn anyway? Interesting. Do a Bowmasters. We're going to ping ourselves so we can actually cast a shadow. But we have a 2-turn clock anyway. The Hullbreacher and the Bowmasters. Not the best combo together. Because one of them prevents the draws. So we ping our Bowmasters for 1. And then it becomes a 2-2 with 1 damage on it. Go attacks. So if we'd have played Bowmasters a turn earlier. Sorry, we're supposed to ping ourselves with that Bowmasters, weren't we? Sorry, that's my mistake there. Because we didn't play our Bowmasters, our opponent does get 1 activation of his Ancient Tomb. We could have played the Bowmasters a turn earlier to stop that. Intuition. Okay. I'm going to go find Show and Tell. I'm pretty sure we're dead here. And we haven't really given our opponent much choice. This means that some Omniscience lines aren't going to work though. Because they're not going to be able to draw the extra cards to dig to find the thing. Because sometimes you just go Show and Tell Omniscience into play, just keep casting all the cantrips and dig spells for free until you win. This is not going to do anything. We're going to gain a treasure here. They look at the top 3 cards though. They shuffle their library. A Show and Tell going to 1. An Omniscience. Draw spells don't cut it. Needs to be big Emrakul. They're going to Surgically Extract our Wasteland. Okay. They're just trying to see if we have a counterspell in hand. But they wouldn't care about Emrakul. Alright, so this Cunning Wish will be good enough. Then we'll go and get Shared Summons. Firemind's Foresight. So if you're unfamiliar with this one, this lets them search their library for a bunch of spells. So one of the spells they find is another Cunning Wish. And, yep, Impulse, they can still look for cards with that. Another Surgical Extraction. That's an interesting one. Extracting our Polluted Delta. Are they building up Storm? I don't know why Surgical Extraction is useful for them here. It might just be a thing that you have for the sake of it. Well, they know that we're tapped out here, so we may as well F6 this turn and see where they end up. I'm pretty sure they can win with the Cunning Wish here. I think they have Shared Summons, which then goes and finds an Emrakul, and they cast the Emrakul. And then they bash us in the sky for 15 and we die. I'm pretty sure Shared Summons is an instant they can find. They've already Surgical us once, so they already have the information about what's in our deck. Yep, here's an Impulse. There's the Emrakul. That'll do. Surgicals are interesting. I don't think that's going to change how we're going to approach this game. I think we're just going to go back in with the same. So if we'd have done the line where we played the Bowmaster, so our opponent would have been at 1. they wouldn't have been able to activate their Ancient Tomb. But that just means that they wouldn't cast that Ponder that they cast. They would have just... I don't know. Maybe that was a mistake to not get the pressure on. I have to go back and have a check. This is aggressive. This is turn 1 Street Wraith. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, plus 5. That's 9 damage we take. So we can play a turn 1 Death Shadow with power. And then we can try and follow up with a Ponder. So we get our pressure down first. Pay 2 life. Cycle this. That doesn't hurt either. So we can get a Death Shadow next turn off of after we've done all this. Let's just get a 3/4. So we got some pressure now, and then we can Ponder into more stuff. We can Daze. Yeah, this is a reasonable spot to be in. See what my opponent goes for here. I assume it's just going to be a Ponder. Okay, Preordain. Same but different. Let's see where they put these cards with the Scry. 2 bottom. That's what we like to see. So we could try and Ponder into a land. I think that is the best play here, because that will give us double Daze as well. So let's Ponder. We're just going to keep the land here. So bash for 3. Let's crack this for Watery Grave. Pay 2 life. Play a massive guy, holding up double Daze. So we've got 8 damage coming in next turn, and then they'll be dead the turn after. So we don't need to commit this second Death Shadow. Right, our Wasteland not really helping us out here. It's not a Force of Will, happy to see you. Let's do some attacking. Half of our opponent's life total. If we play out this Wasteland, it gives us more chance to play around Flusterstorm and Dazes that our opponent could have. And I don't think we need to play a Death Shadow here. A Brainstorm. Sure, I think that's acceptable. Alright, they're just off it. So the threat plan worked out pretty well there. This is something that the builds of Death Shadow haven't been able to do that often for a while. A lot of Death Shadow builds lately have been a lot slower, with like Orcish Bowmasters, Death Shadow and Murktide as basically their win conditions. Whereas this build goes a lot further back towards the old days where it used to be Street Wraith, Reanimate and Delver as your turn 1 plays. So instead we got the Stalactite Stalker instead of the Delver. But yeah, 1-0, let's go to round 2. Our opening hand for round 2 wants these Brainstorms to do some work for us. We do have a Grief. I think this is acceptable. Misty Rainforest. Yeah, I'll cycle Street Wraith. Okay, so that's going to be better for next turn, isn't it? Let's play this. We will pay 2 life here because we might need to do an emergency Brainstorm. Or Brainstorm before the Bowmasters gets online. Are we going to see a main deck Veil of Summer here? Or are we going to see a Brainstorm to protect their hand? By playing this Watery Grave out, we've played around Daze, but it does mean that we don't get to Wasteland this Volcanic Island straight away. 4th Eorlingus and Uro. Okay, we'll take the 4th Eorlingus. In case they have the... Let's check their mana base. There's no black mana here. So they can't put an Orcish Bowmasters into play, so we don't need to do that just yet. Because they would need Orcish Bowmasters and a black mana source to put one. So there's a Trop. And there's the beans. Let's just see if we've got a Daze for this. Wouldn't mind cutting this off. Alright. The beans can resolve. Let's play this. We know one of the top cards of our library. Is it worth brainstorming now? I think so. Okay, into this Reanimate here. And we'll just put back Underground Sea and a Flooded Strand, I think. Let's crack this. Then we just get Underground Sea for this bit. And let's Reanimate this Grief. They might only have an Uro, so we might just be putting the Uro to graveyard. So they've got a Plow as well. Sure. Let's cycle this while we're here. Because they could be a Bowmaster. Obviously, again, they still can't cast Bowmasters this turn anyway. But I like to... I don't know, maybe I'm supposed to save that Street Wraith to power through a cantrip. Okay, so they've got an Uro in. They're going to put in his Plains. They're going to put in his Mystic Sanctuary. What are you going to put on top of your library there, opponent? Is it the Plow? It is the plough. Oakley dokley. We can't waste them off of white here. We can waste them off of a different colour though. But I think the beginning of this turn is Brainstorm. Okay, we're going to start putting back some lands here. How badly do I want to not draw those lands next turn? We can make 2 threats. Or we can take our opponent off of green. Interesting. I don't really want to draw 2 lands onto our deck, so I think we are going to do double threats here. We're making the biggest threats possible. So, because of the size of the Death Shadow, if they plow one of the other guys, it won't kill our shadow. So, they basically will probably be plowing our shadow this turn. And then we get to attack for 5. And maybe try and waste our opponent off of something good. So we know they've got a plow in hand. There it is. Alright. So we can waste them off of green to make this Uro less likely to materialize. Let's go attacks. We're just going to scale up nicely. I think I'm more worried about Uro than anything else right now. I would like a Street Wraith in play, please. So we've got 9 power in play right now. Across 3 different bodies. I need a white source to Supreme Verdict, but most of these decks tend to run Terminus because of the obvious synergy it has with their deck. Another plow, sure. Let's go attacks. Let's play this Wasteland. What are we supposed to hit with this Wasteland is the interesting question. Because we can't stop them casting Uro if they want to go and get a green mana off of this Misty Rainforest and then have a green mana. We just can't stop that. But we might be able to stop the 4th Link. So I think we take out the red source here. If they just have another green source and can put the Uro into play, we can snuff it out. And that's bad for us. Because they're going to go up to 10 and draw another card. But it's a thing we get to do. It just comes in with the trigger on the stack. We will snuff this out now, paying life. We don't want them to get another card that might be able to save it. Right, we got 2-turn clock here. What does a Brainstorm actually do for us here? We don't have any cards to move around. This is just digging for something. What would we be digging for in this spot? Like another threat in case they kill one of these guys? I think that's probably a reasonable shout there. I don't hate the Borrower. Now they play an Uro, we can bounce it. They go to 7 and we have 6 damage on the crackback. If it's a fetch they use to do it, then we have them dead. So they would need to put more cards in their graveyard. So it could be like fetch, ponder, Uro. Right, that's the first part of that equation. Right, so there's the fetch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, so they can put... oh no, they're just going to leyline binding here. Drawing a card off of Up the Beanstalk. And we can bounce this binding to bring back our creature. I think they get rid of the Street Wraith here. Oh no, they're getting rid of the Grief. That's good for us, because when we bounce this, we get to look at their hand again. They're going to leyline binding again. Okay. And at end step, we'll bounce the one with our Grief under it. And we have a Ponder on top of our library if we need to dig ourselves out of this hole. But I think if this doesn't work, our opponent probably wins. All right. They didn't have anything against it, so we managed to get there. Whew, that was really tight. I would like some Dauthi Voidwalkers, please. They're more threats, and they do some pretty interesting stuff in this matchup with things like Uro. The Hullbreacher is nice. Snuff Outs, they did come up useful there, but this isn't really a matchup where you want Snuff Out. I'd rather deal with the Uro with other items, like the Nihil Spellbomb was also fine here. The Borrower bouncing Leyline Bindings is quite nice. How much can we rely on our graveyard in this matchup? Maybe we're supposed to trim. I guess Death Shadow is pretty bad against white removal as a general rule. Daze on the draw. I'm not so into that. But I'd rather have another Borrower, I think so. We could bring in things like Hydroblast for 4th Lingus and maybe Minsc and Boo, but I don't think they're running Minsc and Boo. Force of Negation is kind of just better than Force of Will a lot of the times here. But I think I'll play a Force over a Daze on the draw. I don't really want to be pitching double cards to 2 cards to stop their things, but it's kind of how down and dirty we're going to have to get sometimes. What does our opening hand do? We make a Stalactite Stalker and then we just wasteland them a bunch. That's honestly fine. Our opponent's deck is quite greedy with its mana base. If we can punish that, then all good. A blue card, just go with this Force of Will, wouldn't be the worst. Did I speak into existence? I did not. Although I do get to cycle this Street Wraith. And we can play a much deadlier threat right now. Or we can just start scaling up this Stalactite Stalker here. That seems fine. Because we cycle the Street Wraith, this will get bigger. They're just going to plow this in response. Next turn we can Wasteland Stalactite and Stalactite Stalker. And then turn after we can just start reanimating threats every turn. Because we might find something like a Grief, which I would rather have as our thing that we get 2 bites of the cherry with. Goes out the Beanstalk. It's a pretty good one. They didn't really draw many cards from the Beanstalk until right at the end of the last game. We'll take out their removal colour for now. And then next turn, if they don't have any white, we'll take out green. Because green is their Uro colours, and white is their removal colour. And then blue is just the grease that works on the wheels there and gets everything going. I did not shuffle there. Let's go attacks. I think I'll just deploy this other Stalactite Stalker. And we will just be hitting our opponent's lands every turn we can. This will also grow both of our lads. We've got a Force of Will blue card available to us. We've now got 5 power in play. Right, another green source. A Carpet of Flowers. I don't think this one is allowed to resolve. We only have one island though. Honestly, I think that's okay. I think we protect our guys from things like Terminus instead. I'll probably make blue mana off of this and cast a cantrip with me, I guess. Or white mana and kill one of our guys. There's white mana. Do we care about this Source to Plowshares enough to Force of Will here? We have another threat. This is our only bite of the cherry if we do want to use our force here. That's a really tough call. 3 cards on our opponent's hand. Do we just want to get this game done? I think so. Like, the longer this game goes on, with the setup our opponent's got over there, the worse it's going to be for us. All right, they've got a force, so they're going to draw a card off of this. That's pretty brutal. We'll lose our Stalactite Stalker, but we'll get to untap into another threat. A Hullbreacher. Right, we'll attack our 2-2. This is no longer going to grow. So I kind of wanted to get them down earlier so we can at least get them doing some reasonable damage instead of just being a 1-1 for 1. Right, let's make a Street Wraith. We got 5 power again. Their removal is generally white removal, so we're not going to be able to reanimate stuff that's already died. They did not use their carpet in the second. Well, they didn't use their carpet in either of the phases. Let's go attacks. Wouldn't have minded a second mana there, but we're just going to do what we've got, really. This Bowmasters, because like the Beanstalk is a mandatory draw, could be enough to get the last points of damage over if we end up in that sort of situation, where them just casting spells ends up putting them in the dirt. Alright, this is going to be a big 4th Eolingus, I believe. And they can hold back some guys as well. There's the red mana. Oh no, it's not a 4th Eolingus. It's a Solitude. It draws them a card. So they take out our Menace guy here. Okay, no, they're going to take out the Swamp Walker. Interesting. Because they can't block this one. Although we're kind of just dead here anyway, right? It's a little bit too late there. Are we trading this into this? That doesn't really feel amazing for us. But if they keep gaining life, that's also terrible for us. Alright, we'll try and get a trade off here. Because if we attack for 2 and they attack for 3, we're falling behind. So we may as well just let them gain 3 and we'll try and take their Solitude out if it attacks. And if they don't attack with it, maybe we can find a way around it soon. Right, a Brainstorm is pretty good. We've got a Force of Will locked and loaded, ready to go on something scary. But, alright, yes, I'll take this trade. So we could reanimate a Solitude and just have a guy. Doesn't seem the worst. Okay, I will cycle this. A Grief, you say? I like the Grief. Let's see what you got over there, opponent. Force of Will, Lorien Revealed. Quite the selection of stuff here. So we'll reanimate our Grief here. They will Force of Will this, I believe. They will draw a card, then we will Force of Will back and take whatever that last card is. Because our hand does nothing else here. What have you got? Another Carpet. Right, our opponent is Hellbent. We have a 3 power guy. they're on 7. It was a land. If they crack this, it reduces the clock, so they're only going to crack this if they have something good. How many islands? 1, 2, 3. Right, so they can go and get... what can they put back on top of their library here? Plough is pretty good. Right, I think we're on Ponder time here. Ponder, Brainstorm, Underground Sea. Right, so we're going to take this Underground Sea. We're not going to play it because they have a carpet. Although, does it matter if they have a carpet at this point? Is it worth just playing a land out so that if I ponder into something and end up playing a Wasteland, I can do that? I think so. So they're going to plough our guy this turn. No? Have they already used their Mystic Sanctuary? Or they're doing it in their upkeep? Okay, that's fine. There it is. What is that? The ponder, not the plough. That's very odd to me. They had a clean answer to this guy. Just ready to go. That's incredibly greedy. They chose not to shovel their library. Up the beanstalk. Okay. So the next card underneath that is going to be what? A Leyline Binding? An Uro. Okay. That's so greedy not to just get the plough there. But I guess their deck is one built around greed at the end of the day. So next turn they get an Uro. So we need to kind of nip that in the bud straight away. Let's ponder. Brainstorm, brainstorm, brainstorm. This is any order, and we're going to shuffle. A brainstorm. Need to find something that deals with what's going on over there. Yikes. Would I rather have Brainstorm and Death Shadow or just Orcish Bowmasters? I think it's probably just the Bowmasters here. This order. We put our opponent to 3. They go to 6. And yeah, this gets a little bit awkward. Of course, it's a close one out. So we use Bowmasters to absorb this damage and ping a bit of extra damage across. Yep, there's a Leyline Binding. Unfortunately, we can't quite get the Bowmasters out now. Alright. Things are going badly, but there is hope. You can play Orcish Bowmasters this turn in response to this trigger. And then next turn we can play a Shadow, which is big enough to swallow up the Uro if we want it to be. But our opponent has double Beanstalk now, so it's probably not going to go amazing for us right there. So this trigger will go on a stack. We'll make ourselves a little Bowboy. We'll ping our opponent for 1. We'll get a draw here. We'll ping our opponent for 1. We'll take 6, so you can make a big Death Shadow next turn. 2 white mana. Okay, we get to ping them twice more. So they have to hit the Orc army rather than the Bowmasters here. Otherwise they lose. Okay, unless they just got another removal spell. Which isn't unprecedented given the amount of cards in our opponent's hand here. Okay, so now we're going to make a big Death Shadow and hope that it does stuff. What is this? Lorien Revealed? It is a Lorien Revealed. We were very, very close to winning this one. If our opponent drew a land, that, like just a regular land instead of that Flooded Strand, then we would have won. And if they didn't get lucky off of their Ponder, they should have just got a Swords to Plowshares then, but they high rolled and got us with that. So step 1, make a large guy. Step 2, we have a Brainstorm we can fire off for an emergency Daze. Do I think an emergency Daze is going to do anything? No. Would an emergency Snuff Out do anything? No, because we have 4 life. So the only reason I would want to use this Brainstorm in this turn cycle is to be mana efficient on the next turn cycle. However, our opponent has put some mana into the pool there. I don't believe we can beat a 4th Theolingus here. Unless they tap out. So Daze can get them, because we've still got Daze in there. Nope, that'll do. They basically drew their entire deck that game. We were so close to winning that one. On the play, I like Dazes a bit more. I still like Borrowers to bounce stuff. A Force of Negation. We'll get rid of some Force of Will. So I can certainly see myself hard casting a Force of Will. So get rid of a couple of forces maybe. So relying on Dazes a little bit. Kind of need to get in underneath our opponent and stop them early on. I do still like Hullbreacher, although we haven't really been getting to the sort of manner where we get to cast them. The Reanimates are okay. Do we need a Spellbomb? If we've got 2 Voidwalkers, it's probably still fine. Maybe it's 1 Reanimate goes. Or is it 1 Wraith goes? Let's try that. Oh, we didn't have Snuff Outs anyway for the... Anyway. We have no beginning mana, so this is a mulligan from me. We have double Grief and Daze on... We have Grief, Reanimate, Grief, Daze on turn 1. I will take this. I'll say keep. And I don't think we need double Daze. I think I'd rather have a Ponder left over. Just try and scam them out of the game. Plough, Plough to Ferry. Okay, so we're going to take a Plough, and then we're going to take a Plough. So we've got Ponder to Ferry, and some lands. So I think we're going to go see possibly Misty Rainforest Island. No, they're just going to go straight in for a Trop. So expose themselves to Wasteland here. Have to try and get them with this Grief before it's too late. They chose not to shuffle with a Ponder. It's terrible news for us. We have a Wasteland. We can certainly slow our opponent down if that's the thing we're interested in. I'd like to Ponder first. We don't really have the cards to move around with a Brainstorm, so I'm just going to end the order of this. So we can either take out their white removal, or we can just slow them down a turn. I think with the Daze in hand, I think I just want to cut things out from underneath them as much as possible. And whereas the previous game we were on the draw and it wasn't quite good enough, maybe this time it will be. They're going to get basic, or they're just going to ignore that. I think they should ignore that. Oh no, they got the basic. Interesting. Under. A Death Shadow, a Force of Will, a Polluted Delta. I wish this was a Brainstorm instead of a Ponder. I do want the Shadow, and the Force of Will isn't bad, but we can only do the Shadow if we get the Delta, which means you don't get the Force of Will. So that means our next 2 turns is just Shadow. I think we can do better than this. Alright, we did not do better than that. Understood. Playing this out does play into Carpet a little bit, which is awkward. But I want to have the mana available so we can cast one like a Hullbreacher if we draw it. Up the Beanstalk. No, thank you. This is the thing that lets them go over the top of us and just get so much card advantage and undo all the work we've been doing with Grief. Let's attack. Play this guy. Play this. Pay 2 life. So we can represent things like Spell Pierce, as well as also having less life, so that if we draw a Death Shadow, it's actually a threat. Right, there's a Tundra. We're going to see the Teferi this turn. Nope, just on the Beanstalk, sure. That's both good and bad news for us. It means they're not getting anything of ours off the board this turn. But it does mean that as each turn goes on, they just get stronger, as this gets them incidental card advantage. Murktide Regent, you say? That's not a bad one. The way our opponent Brainstorm there makes me think that they have a Terminus that's setting up for next turn. Do I play out this Underground Sea, or do I hold it for Brainstorm purpose? I think we leave it in hand. I do think our opponent has a Terminus they're about to jam down us. No? Okay. If we'd have played out the Murktide, we might have been able to kill them this turn. But I think if they had the Terminus, we're just kind of knackered at that point. Probably going to bounce the... I don't know, maybe it's the Grief here. Oh no, they just plus the Teferi, right? No, they haven't plus the Teferi yet. They are going to bounce our guy here. Right, so I think I'm going to attack the Teferi. This is only dealing 1 damage. And then this turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't have any creatures to leave in the graveyard anyway. But if we crack this, we do get to grow our Stalactite. So we're going to do that. And we will get an Underground Sea here. Sorry, a Watery Grave here. That's all we can get, actually. Blue, blue, and I will pay for this just to leave more stuff in if we draw another Murktide. We're obviously making a big Murktide here. Does our opponent have a Hydroblast? We haven't shown... sorry, a Pyroblast. They haven't shown us Pyroblasts in the previous 2 games. So, right, Force of Will to up the Beanstalk. And then next turn we get to hardcast this Grief. Our Stalactite Stalker is a lethal threat after next turn if it gets to attack. We're just going to get buried by an Uro here, though. Right, opponent's on 3. Into planes. There's going to be a big 4 Theolingus. Our guy does have Menace, which is important to note. There it is. So they attack with 1, leave 2 back to block our Stalactite Stalker. And then they probably are odds on to win this game. They're attacking with everything. That is interesting. That was an interesting line there. So an Orcish Bowmasters wouldn't go amiss. There's an Orcish Bowmasters. Just go to attacks here. Opponent's got 4 cards in hand. Let's see if this is good enough. Because this isn't a blue card, I don't think there's any point waiting for the Monarch. If this was the blue card, I would wait in my end step, see if I drew a Force of Will to go with the blue card. But because it's a Grief, what I could do there is pitch Bowmasters to Grief and try and draw a Bowmasters. But that just feels like a recipe for disaster. We did manage to grind this one out. This is a really good game, actually. Really close. But we, being on the play, just managed to sneak in underneath them. We had, like, no more real turns of agency after this. So, all right. We are 2-0. Let's go to round 3. Yeah, this hand looks all right to me. The Force of Will, hopefully we can find a blue card with it off of our Street Wraith. Let's take a card first. An Underground Sea. So we'll take 5, that puts us to 13. I think it's still worth paying the life here. Just get a guy. Just a harmless little Street Wraith. Alright, Arab Mesa is being cracked by our opponent here. We're looking at Red-White Initiative or Red-White Painter. That would be my guess from seeing an Arab Mesa. Basic Plains. And Urza Saga. Okay, it's making me think more likely towards the Painter side of things. Canonist. Yep, that's a very Painter Servant sort of card. So by paying that life on turn 1, it means we can drop a Death Shadow this turn. I'd like to see if they want to chop block our Street Wraith. All these lands in our hand are not good though. We will be removing this as a Saga now. And we'll play our Death Shadow. It's only a 2-2. So it is vulnerable to things like Lightning Bolt, but the red-white painted decks tend to play Plow. I guess they could Plow our Street Wraith and they'll kill both of our guys. And that would make me very sad. So maybe we're not supposed to play the Shadow there. We'd love a Brainstorm. We've got a load of rubbish in our hand. A Grief. Good grief indeed. Let's go to attacks. We can obviously grow our Shadow if they block here. I'm going for the block. I think they have a Plow here. Yep, there's the Plow. So these will trade. So it ends up being a 2 for 2. I think our opponent should have just plowed the Street Wraith in their turn, to be honest. I think that's better because you just do a 2 for 1, whereas that way we ended up gaining a card that we didn't need to gain out of their hand, out of their board in terms of the Canonist. A Painter's Servant, sure. Gonna name blue. Yeah, they got Pyroblast in their deck. Makes sense. Can we draw a Brainstorm to fix up our terrible hand? No, we can just draw another land. Right, we'll play a Scalding Tarn. We've only got, like, what? 2 fetchables left in the deck? I think we've got 1 Watery Grave and 1 Underground Sea left. Not feeling amazing about this one. A Snuff Out. That is a card that we're allowed to cast. We can also cast this Grief, though. We're going to go and get ourselves an Underground Sea off of this. Right, can we Grief? If they Red Blast this, we can blow up their Painted Servant in response, and the Red Blast will fizzle. Because our spell is no longer blue. Nice little exchange there. Let's see what you've got, opponent. Fury, Fury, Ensnaring Bridge, and 4th Eorlingus. Interesting. Not a big fan of what I'm seeing here. So they're clearly building up for a turn where they Fury our guy and 4th Eorlingus at the same time. I think we take the 4th Eorlingus. Might be a bit of a pain to get through this Ensnaring Bridge. We do have a Brazen Borrower that we can dig to at some point. Land Ensnaring Bridge is not what we want to see here, though. We'd like to maybe try and find a blue card at some point. Right, Fury, exiling Fury, killing our Grief. Sure. So we've had 2 2-for-1s in a row. Wow. Not two 2/1s, I suppose. Oh yeah, they're two. Yeah, because of grief. Yeah. So we're whittling our opponent's cards down. That does just make their Ensnaring Bridge better. A Goblin Engineer. Okay. Where is this going to find them? Phyrexian Dragon Engine, perhaps? Might be one of the better ones. Yep. Okay, deck. Now we might just get beaten down by this Phyrexian Dragon Engine. We will play this because this gives us hardcast Force of Will. But not feeling special about this one. We have drawn only lands this game. I think. No, we drew a Snuff Out, I think. But then it's just lands. It's going to start attacking us for one. Yep. Fair enough. This is just another creature to attack us, which is awkward. If we draw a spell, we're going to want to have our mana up next turn. Yuck, I hate this play. This is 2 life if I do this as well. We'll just let this resolve, I think. I don't think that's worth the Force of Will just yet. Reanimate. We don't really have the life to reanimate very effectively here. We could bring back this Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Go to 1, draw some cards, and hope that one of them deals with what's in play. We could reanimate our Death Shadow, which will be big, and only cost us 1 life. I think that is probably going to be the better play here, isn't it? We don't have any more fetchables, so these fetch lands in hand now are terrible. They are just Brainstorm food. We might have to use 1 just to pay 1 life to shuffle. But our opponent can't attack into us very profitably. They can put us to 2, but then we kind of roadblock them a little bit. Okay, so there's an Ancient Tombs. They can deploy the Ensnaring Bridge and then start welding in things like Dragon Engine. And that's going to be pretty good. I think our opponent has this one. We do have a Borrower in our deck, which will be pretty useful. We can bounce it and play it and then swing. A Murktide Regent, you say. Is that better than a Force of Will here? We're not getting attacked by the Dragon Engine. Actually, that's not true. We might be getting attacked by the Dragon. Do I want to have a Force of Will up or do I want to play a Murktide Regent? That's a tough one. I think I'll take the Regent for now. We will make it big so that we can kill our opponent if we can remove their stuff. We'll leave the creature in case we draw a Reanimate and somehow have life. This gives us 2 blockers if they weld out the Dragon Engine. So the plan here is to find the Borrower, bounce the Ensnaring Bridge, which is going to be difficult to do because they have their Engineers. I think our opponent has us more or less locked here unless we can start getting rid of some Engineers and things. So now they're going to get this Dragon Engine, draw 3 cards off of it. Pretty good. And then they can weld it back in right now if they want to as well. Depending on how this game is, they see this game going. Because they're probably not really attacking with this Dragon Engine. So they probably just weld at end of turn and get back Painter. Because that turns on things like Hydroblast from their deck. And then they can obviously just weld in the Ensnaring Bridge again if they need to next turn. Obviously, I don't know what our hand is, but yeah, all right. Okay, they're just getting the bridge at rank. That's quite a defensive line, but it's fair enough. Another Ancient Tomb. A Mox Opal. Actually useful. It's just another artifact that they can start welding stuff with. It's only a matter of time until they assemble their combo here. They want to plough our Death Shadow. That gives us a lot of life to work with. But the problem isn't really our life total here. They bring back the engine. They discard here. Ancient Tomb. Yeah, I think this game was going alright for us until we just started bricking into lands. There is a Painter. They still need a Grindstone. First name's Red Blast. Or name's Black, so we can't snuff it out. Sure. Soul Guide Lantern. That shuts down any reanimation we might have. So they're going to get rid of our grief here. There it goes. Some more welding is afoot. And Aethersworn Canonist. Sure, that's pretty good. And Orcish Bowmasters. That one doesn't hurt too bad. We can ping off this Goblin Weld to make things slightly more difficult for them. Or we can wait until they try and weld the Dragon Engine again. So they're about to draw some cards, and then we can ping off both their welders or kill their painter. I think killing both their welders is what we have to do here, though. Now, we might just be dead this turn anyway. Certainly a possibility. Oh, another engineer. Are we counterspelling this engineer? I don't think so. Maybe we're supposed to have counterspelled that because they're just going to go and get Grindstone and kill us now, right? Yeah, we have to counterspell that one. That was a bit sloppy. I don't think we're winning this game, though. If we do that, then they just draw 3 more cards anyway. Yeah, I think I'm done with that. Alright, let's go to sideboarding where we get Null Rod. It's pretty good. Spellbomb is good. Dauthi Voidwalker and Fatal Pushes are good. I'll tell you what isn't good, though. Force of Wills into their million Pyroblast deck doesn't feel great. And Dazes into their deck doesn't feel good. Dress Down has some good text here. I like the Hydroblasts, sort of. I guess we haven't seen that much red from them. I have to imagine they're running Fable. Like, we've seen Fortheolingus, they have to be running Fable. Right, so I'm down for this sort of stuff. Snuff Out might not be any good if they're just going to be naming black, but we can obviously kill other things. These are fine. Borrower. How do I feel about Borrower? Powder Keg also not unhelpful. Although it takes out a lot of their 0 drops. I don't know. I think we want to trim like this. We want this island actually as well. I think we definitely want Reanimate because our opponent's got Furies in their deck. Reanimating those is good times. I couldn't find a space for the island. I don't think. Let's mulligan this one. Double Wasteland isn't going to get it there either. I don't believe in this Street Wraith to find us the thing we need. Okay, we can keep this. So we have Underground Sea, Hydroblast, Street Wraith, Wasteland. So get rid of these 2. Keep the Watery Grave. Another Street Wraith. Ponder. I don't think we ponder just yet. I think we hold up this Hydroblast in case they like have a hand that just makes a turn 1 Fable. That's quite a nice thing to get out from underneath our opponent. There is a Great Furnace. That is a wastelandable land. Alright, this is also worth Hydroblasting. Do I want to wasteland this or we save the wasteland? I think we save the wasteland for an Urza Saga. So we're just going to play this out. We don't want them to know that we have a wasteland, so they might be more inclined to go into a Saga plan. And then we can Bowmasters down something like a Welder. If I knew I was drawing Bowmasters, I wouldn't have counted that Welder. But we didn't know. There's the Urza Saga that we want our opponent to play. Please play another Welder. That's what I'd like to see here. Just a regular Goblin Welder. It's a Painter's Servant. How much point is there in getting Bowmasters down right now? Honestly, I don't think there's a lot of point to it. I think we need to save that as a piece of removal because we're not going to be able to attack through what our opponent's doing. Right, let's ponder. I like Wasteland here. Wasteland into Stalker is pretty nice. We only get one of these cards anyway. So we'll crack this. I think I'm just going to get a C here. So our opponent can turn the corner and do some aggressive things along the way. Let's get Stalker going, and then let's Wasteland the Saga. We could try and take our opponent off of red mana, but it's unlikely because their deck is full of like red mana, whereas the Urza Saga is just a clear and present threat. That also finds their combo, so I think it'd be a bit foolish not to take that. Please play a Goblin Welder so we can get some value off this Bowmasters. Another Underground Sea. There's the Welder. There is a Grindstone. Wowzers trousers, that's a bit scary, isn't it? Alright, we draw a Wasteland that turn, ideally. We did not draw a Wasteland that turn. How much is this to do stuff with? 3 mana. That's not the amount of mana I have, is it? So we need a Wasteland to hit this, really. So I guess we can have a Fatal Push, that also does stuff here. Let's have a little ponder. These do not do it. Reanimate. Does this help? Does this help? What do we do with it? We can reanimate a Street Wraith. That doesn't do anything. Can I make a Welder? That's kind of a weird one. Do we think our opponent doesn't have a third land? That's the only way that we win this game. Yikes. I guess the other play we had was attack with the Stalker, see if they block with Paint 7, but I don't think our opponent is going to do that. I think we're just getting their Welder back here. And hoping they don't have another mana. We attack with this. If they double block, we kill their Welder. Which is not nothing, but they're just going to take it, because why would they care? You got to land over their opponent. They do. They're going to grindstone us right now. They are. Alright. Yeah, we got bodied pretty hard in that match at the end of the day. Dauthi Voidwalker is pretty good. I think game 1 was pretty bad because we just had lands. We only drew lands for the whole game. And this one we had to mulligan to 5, so we were a little bit short of what we needed. I think this matchup is okay. We have some pretty good sideboard cards, and you know we've got some nice disruptive elements. But sometimes the heart of the cards isn't with you, and we did have to mulligan a lot. Maybe that's a problem with the deck, perhaps. I think our mana base and stuff is fine though, but that's something to consider. Let's go to round 4. Island Ponder is reasonable. I believe our opponent is playing the Turbo Mux. No, they're playing Vile Goblins. I played their deck on the channel recently. Do I think our hand is good enough to do anything against that deck? Like, we have a Force of Will for the big scary thing. I think this is acceptable. Right. Yeah, Bloodstained Mire. I'm pretty sure our opponent is on the old Goblins train. Alright, that's a threat that we can work towards. I don't think we need to be punishing our life total in this matchup. Let's ponder. A Death Shadow and some more ponders. I think we're just going to any order and shuffle. We're looking for things like Snuff Out here. Street Wraith is interesting. We can fire this off at instant speed if we decide we need a Snuff Out or something, or we want more information about the blue cards we're doing. But we don't just want to fire it off now in case we end up in a situation where that 2 damage is lethal. There is a Rishdan Port from our opponent. They don't have a Vial though, so they're just going to crack and do this now. They are. Do I want to Brainstorm in response to this Rishdan Port? I don't believe I do. This Brainstorm is probably going under the Force of Will unless something happens. Another Reanimate. Let's cycle this. Let's go and get an Underground Sea. I would like a Street Wraith, please. It's not the biggest, baddest threat you've ever seen, but it's the biggest thing on the board. And there's no cavern just yet. Although I shouldn't have said that. There it is. Spoke into existence. There is a cavern on Goblin. So I guess the ideal here is they stick a Goblin into exactly 6 and then we counter their Muxus. A Goblin Matron that can't be countered. Sure. Which lovely Goblin would you like to put in your hand? I think our opponent's deck is favoured in this matchup, and our opponent is an incredibly good Goblins player. So we're in some trouble, I think. A Ponder. What does this Ponder do for us? 1, 2, 3, 4. We can make a Murktide of reasonable size. So we cast a Ponder. Are these cards that useful to us right now? Like, I think we're just going to make a 6/6 Murktide. What do we want our next turn to be is the question. Do we want to have an Orcish Bowmasters? Potentially that is 2 blockers. That might be quite good. So we'll put the Bowmasters into our hand. We have to take damage here because that's the way our deck's configured. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6/6. We have Force of Will blue card, but our opponent has a Cavern. We need to hope they don't have a second Cavern, so they can't namestick a Goblin and then Muxus. So they namestick a Goblin off this Cavern. We can't counter it. We just do nothing there. But we've got a big clock in play. We can do Bowmasters things and then reanimate the Bowmasters and just keeping their 1/1s down whilst also making chump blockers. I think that's an acceptable approach. Glad we got some Hydroblast in the sideboard at least. Our opponent's deck is not a Turbo Muxus deck. There is Vile Goblin, so it is a little bit slower, but it has more toolboxy elements, for better or worse for us. Right, there is a Sticker Goblin. You can have your Sticker Goblin. How much mana is this going to produce for you? 6. Okay. Are they going to play into our Force of Will? They're going to drop a Cavern and make us feel sad. Who knows? Broadside Bombardiers. This is too good to deal with right now. So we can steal this Bombardiers ourselves with this Reanimate. And then we can kill our opponent next turn, right? Yes, we have lethal through their Bombardiers because we Reanimate it, attack. Is that true? If we Bowmasters down one of their guys, they can double block. And we get... Have they got another Broadside Bombardiers over there? What's the exact text on this? Only if this creature attacked this turn. So, if we play Broadside Bombardiers, so if we Reanimate this, we ping off a Matron, then they have both of these have to block the Broadside Bombardiers, and then they take 6, 7, 8, 9. That's not enough, but they lose a bunch of stuff. I think that's acceptable. The other option here is we blow up this Sticker Goblin. That doesn't seem great here. All right, they've had enough. So this is 6 plus 9, which is 15. And then this is the rest of the damage. Yeah, the math was there. I'm not a combat math guy, as I often say. So that worked out right. Right, what do we want for this matchup? Dress downs are good. Hydroblast are good. Borrower has text. Fatal Push is good. This island is potentially good. And that's about it. I don't think we want the Borrower here. How good is Daze in this matchup? Probably not great. How good is Force of Will in this matchup? Again, not great. But I think it's a thing we have to play some of due to the nature of our opponent's deck. How many are we playing is the next question. Are we running the full 4? I think we probably have to run the full 4. Which means we're probably trimming something like a Street Wraith because we don't really want to be lowering our life total that much. Alright. We have a Force of Will. We have some guys that don't really do anything. Death Shadow can certainly get bigger. We're going to need something for this to get these Stalkers doing anything. Is this a good enough hand? I guess we're on the draw, so we have some options here. I think I am going to keep this, but I don't like it. Nickton Licton, as they say. Which is a reference to a British comedy show from like the 90s, but there you go. Our opponent mulligan to 5, which isn't terrible news for us. Ether Vial. So if we don't counterspell this, we don't counterspell anything. I will take this Vial out. Our opponent isn't a Turbo Muxus deck, by the way. Sure. We have a Death Shadow in hand, so I will... If we can find a fetch land next turn, we can make some... We can have 3 2/2 guys. There's a Bloodstone Mire for our opponent. A Goblin Lackey. That's a guy. I don't think we can afford to attack here in case they have the guy that blows up our guys. This isn't how we drew it up, but I guess we're going to lose to Fury pretty hard here if they have it. But if they have Fury, they probably don't have anything else. I think we can probably attack with this one guy. These Stalactite Stalkers are interesting. I have thoughts, but we'll do that in the wrap-up at the end. We still got another round to go after this as well. I will snap this block off. The Stalactite Stalker only triggers on our turn, so we're not going to get a counter at the end of this turn. Uh-oh. Seeing some movement over there. Matron, I think. Goblin Warchief. Opponent's got 1 card in hand. Hydroblast. Not a bad one for us to have. I don't really want this Stalactite Stalker. These have both got Menace, so I guess they're crashing in. For an almighty 2 damages. We want our opponent to lower our life total a little bit. We don't want to get hit by a Lackey, obviously, because then that can put Mux into play and we lose the game. But letting the Warchief hit us is beneficial to our game plan. A Mog War Marshal. So this makes some 1/1s. Honestly, I don't care about that one. I think that's fine. We can take the damage here. As soon as we get Death Shadow rolling, that's pretty large. Interesting they're holding back with the Warchief. They're probably worrying about Orcish Bowmasters here. But we don't have Orcish Bowmasters. We do now, though. Yeah, these Stalactite Stalkers not looking amazing right now. But we're getting some chip damage in. Are they going to pay the Echo? They are not paying the Echo. Interesting. That suggests to me that the card they had in hand was a real card. So how much are going to hit us for? 4. I will take 4. We can play the Bowmasters end of turn, but we can also hold up this Hydroblast. Now that we know there's no scary monsters coming into play. Ping down this guy. Get a friend. We can keep holding up our Hydroblast as well. Brainstorm. I do like Brainstorms, but I don't really think this is the time and the place for brainstorming. Let's tap these. Play our Death Shadow. It's a 2-2. Fine. Going wide is going to be awkward for them. Hydroblast should hopefully be awkward for them. Let's see what they're up to. A Goblin Matron. I think we let them have the Matron and then counter the thing it gets. Is that a weird way of doing it? That probably is a weird way of doing it. But if they go get like Bombardiers, we can Hydroblast it and get our own Bombardiers. Goblin Ringleader. Alright. So we know what we're Hydroblasting next turn. Brainstorm. Alright, we're going to cast a Brainstorm. Pyroblast? Honestly, that's fine. We can't block both of these. Send them all in. We don't mind the Bowmasters having that guy back on blocks. Like, we'll trade with one of their permanents if they block anything but the Orc Army. And if they block the Orc Army, they pump both of our Stalactite Stalkers. Yeah, I think that's the correct block of no blocks. So they're going to tap out for this Ringleader. We're going to Hydroblast it. And then, who knows? Do they not have a land for the Ringleader? Broadside Bombardiers. Do they have another Pyroblast? They do not. Okay, that's good news. Let's Brainstorm. Move some things around. We're looking at putting this back and this back. Play this out. I'll crack this now so that it never shields down on the Pyroblast. Let's get some Watery Grave. Pay some life. Reanimate this Broadside Bombardiers. Their cards are too good. Surgical Extraction. Okay. I don't think they're going to remove all their Bombardiers. They're just going to remove that one. So we know they've got a Ringleader, but we do have a Hydroblast for that. So we go attacks here. This guy has a 5, so they're not blocking this. Send in the army. So they can just take this. Right, they're just going to chump that one and take the 1, I think. Sure. We're growing our Stalactite Stalkers because we used a fetch land this turn. So we're finally getting some counters on them. Like, if they were Delvers, we would have probably won this game by now. But that's a discussion for the end of the video, I think. Right, they've got 3 mana here, which is enough to play their Ringleader because of their War Chief. We can splat it on the stack, and then our opponent is probably dead. Like, our opponent mulligan to 5. And imagine if they had 2 more cards in this matchup right now. I think we'd be in a lot worse shape. So these can, like, kill stuff now. We'll play this out. So they have to block the... This has to get blocked. These can't be blocked unless they put both of them. So they're basically unblockable. That's 2 damage. We attack with all of these. So they have to block here, and they get to trade, and they get to kill 1 thing here. They get to take 5 and go to 1. That's honestly fine by me. So Matron goes under here. The War Chief probably trades, probably kills this, yeah. And we have Stalactite Stalker as removal if we need it. We'll do this just to grow our guys so they do more damage when we ping them. Let's get a basic island just in case something weird happens. Alright, so we have 3 damage removal spell. That's what this guy does. You sacrifice him and someone gets smashed a bunch. So their turn's going to have to be pretty good to get out from underneath this. 3 mana. Goblin Ringleader. I don't believe this is good enough. Let's see what they find here. Muxus. That's a little bit late. GG's opponent. Alright. Managed to win this one. I think if our opponent hadn't multiplied and they kept to 7, and then they had 2 more cards to go over the top of when we finally managed to run them out of cards, then I don't really fancy our chances there. I think Goblins are very strong. I struggled a little bit to play the Vile build. This build is a lot more complicated to play. You do get a few more options like, Munitions Expert and ways of tackling certain things that you don't get in Turbo Muxus. But it's a lot harder to play. Alright, we are 3-1 going for the 4-1 in the final round. Alright, I like this hand. And we're playing against Arkan again. What are they playing today? Badlands. Alright, they're on some goblin stuff. Let's cycle the Street Wraith. Let's cycle the Street Wraith. I think we'll Force of Will this Lackey. Pitching Brainstorm. A Murktide Regent. Do I want to grief our opponent here? I think we probably do. We're gonna ponder first, in case it changes what we want. Another Force of Will is kind of interesting, but I'm just looking for more lands. We're gonna go any order and shuffle here. We did not hit the land here, but we do have a plan here. If we pitch the Bowmasters, then next turn we can reanimate the grief and then do shadow things. I think that's best. Just get the bigger guy. I've stacked those the wrong way around. It doesn't really matter. Okay, what do we got here? Namesticker Goblin, Broadside Bombardiers, Mog War Marshal. They don't have a second land though. That's kind of interesting. Right, let's take this and just leave them stranded without the ability to produce a threat. We can always take it, the next thing up the curve next turn. Alright, I think we've lucked our way into just ruining our opponent's day. Now the high roll here is to ponder into a land. I think that's worth doing. Okay, we'll put Wasteland on the bottom, then Daze, then Wasteland. And we'll just be the fun police. Let's reanimate our grief here, probably. That's fine. That's what they got. An Ether Vial, we'll take that. It's taking all of their things. One land of double Lackey is pretty reasonable to keep. They're a bit unfortunate they haven't drawn a second land here. Let's go attacks. Play our little friend. Let's play this out as well. Just let them know what's up. It means they'll probably fetch a basic, but I think they're fetching a basic anyway at this point. We have the Daze to back this up, so I think we're in pretty good shape. Play this, pay 2 life. Bash. This is quite an almighty thud of damage. 6, 7, 8, 9. We might as well just chuck this guy in as well. Just to have all the things. This is one of those games where you just cheese your opponent out with a Wasteland. Alright. So, we're up against Vile Goblins again. So, I believe you wanted the Fatal Pushes, the Basic Island, the Dress Down and Hydroblasts. And we're not really in the market for things like Borrower and Dazes. Obviously, Dazes look good there, but that's not necessarily how it is. I don't think we need Street Wraith. And this is probably fine. Getting that game 1 is handy. Maybe we can get some Stalactite Stalkers to do some stuff. Now, there is an option to bring in something like Null Rod or the Powder Keg to deal with Ether Vials, but I don't think that's worth it. I think it's good against our mana denial plan. Yeah, against our mana denial plan with like our Wastelands and stuff, they can vial their way through it, but I don't think it's worth boarding in slots that don't really interact with stuff when they don't have that going on. Because at the end of the day, it's the creatures we're worried about. So we should be having as much creature removal as we can have. Now maybe we should be bouncing, but most of the guys have value when they come into play, like Ringleaders and Matrons and War Marshals, that sort of jazz. And Muxus. I don't really think it's worth bringing in the Borrowers for it. We have a Force of Will we can't use. We have some Wastelands. I don't think we can rely on them to do the same thing they did last time. I think we're going to mulligan here. Hydroblast is something I want to see. I like the Force of Will. I like this. It's probably the Shadow that goes. So we pitch the Murktide to the Force of Will, and then we use the Brainstorm to dig ourselves into some threats and stuff. Now our opponent can Wasteland us into the debt this game. I do not want to play against this. So goodbye Murktide Regent. A Wasteland. That's not really going to be the thing we use here. Are we supposed to... I think we are supposed to play this out so we can at least have our Hydroblast and Fatal Push up. But I got a feeling I'm going to get Wastelanded here. This is what we call Karma. We have another land. We're probably not cracking it anyway. I think Murktide's slightly better than Grief here. I think we put Grief then Murktide. I would like this Wasteland. Alright. Have they got a follow-up here? A Prospector. That's not too troublesome. It could end up being troublesome, don't get me wrong, but... Okay, we have a Grief on top of our library. We're pretty close to just casting a Murktide Regent. That's why I think it's better than Grief here. Does like to Pyroblast though. Second basic mountain from our opponent. A Chalice of the Void where X equals 1. How do I feel about that? I don't feel great about it. We will get ourselves... I think it's an Underground Sea here. We will Fatal Push this Scope Prospector. This puts another card in our graveyard for Murktide. And the Hydroblast can pitch to a Force of Will. So it's the better one of the two to use here. Alright, Chalice of the Void. A Reanimate. That's not a very fun one, is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we could play the Reanimate just as a card to put in our graveyard to make Murktide slightly bigger when the time comes. That seems acceptable to me. They're going to know exactly why we're doing this. Right, we can't brainstorm it into our library anyway because of the Chalice. We didn't have answers for Chalice. Taking our Borrowers out. Maybe we are supposed to have the Powder Keg in. Right, their deck's got quite a lot of 1-drops with like Lackey, Prospector, and Vial. I don't know if we're hitting this now or not. Let's see what we do on our turn. Polluted Delta, you say? Let's try this. I think we do get Watery Grave this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we do just Wasteland the Ancient Tomb here. Get them further away from Muxus. We've got a 3-turn clock. Got nothing else going on. They can't Pyroblast it because of their own Chalice of the Void, actually. They probably can't interact with this Murktide Regent outside of Munitions Expert. So this might just go all the way. 2 mana, 7/7 flyers. Turn out to be pretty good. Okay, this is an excellent draw for us. There is a Wasteland. There is a Name Sticker Goblin. With this ability on the stack, I will kill it so they don't get the mana. Alright. Our opponent's next turn is everything. We have 2 spells to play, but they don't do anything under the Chalice. You got another black mana here. Is this the Drain Life guy? It is the Drain Life guy. Okay. So they're not dead unless we can exile some stuff from our graveyard. So another Murktide would be good. Although I think we pitched one earlier, didn't we? Yeah, we only have 2 in our deck. Scalding Tarn. Alright, we'll go to attacks. We have to sacrifice the other goblin here as well. And they get a 1. Let's fetch land and pass. Ancient Tomb. Alright. Alright, they're showing themselves the door. Alright, GG's opponent. That was a 4-1. Pretty impressive. The only thing we lost to was when we mulled to 5 and then we had the thing where we only do lands. So not so bad, really. I think like the one round we lost, we were very close to winning. Well, we're not very close to winning, but we weren't like a million miles away, and we did go through some pretty horrible hoops. Like that was the Painter deck, and we had a really good start, and then we just drew lands in the first game, and then we mulled to 5 and didn't really go anywhere. So pretty good. Let's talk about this deck. So when I used to play Death Shadow myself a long time ago, the Death Shadow deck, I think it was after a GP. I think Josh Utter-Layton was like the pioneer of changing up how like doing the Death Shadow deck, where it was 4 Death Shadows, 4 Delvers, 4 Street Wraith Reanimate. That was kind of new technology right then, and that was really good. And that was kind of the era that I played Death Shadow, where it felt a lot more like a tempo deck. And now this deck feels like that again. However, I have a question about Stalactite Stalker here, because this is interesting. So the ability to use it as a removal for 3 mana is nice. It does have evasion, which is important, but it doesn't always grow. It can certainly grow bigger than a Delver of Secrets, but it doesn't always grow. We had like a load of times where it was just a 1/1, and obviously it felt pretty bad there. Now Delver can just sit there as a 1/1 as well. At least this has Menace, so if your Delver's not flipping, this guy is better. Also doesn't die to Pyroblast. However, Delver can attack for 3 on turn 2. This can never do that. This can sometimes attack for 2 on turn 2, and then might not scale up for a little while after that. And if we look at our instant and sorcery count, so we've got 8 here, got another 4 here, so that's 12, 13, 14, plus another 8, which is 22. So our instant and sorcery count is relatively high for a Delver of Secrets, if we were to play that instead. Now, in terms of our permanents going to the graveyard, we've got 12 lands that do that, and 4 Street Wraiths, and the 3 Griefs. So that's 16, 19. So that's less cards that go to our graveyard than we would have to flip a Delver of Secrets. So Should we be running Delver of Secrets if we want to build like this instead of Stalactite Stalker? Like, it definitely has extra text on it, and there was, in that Goblin matchup, we were definitely thinking about trying to sacrifice this at one point. But we didn't need to, but it was an option we had, which was quite nice. We certainly got to attack for 3 with this. I don't think we ever attacked for 4 with it, though. So that is interesting. Also, this pitches to Grief, but doesn't pitch to Force of Will. And what's our black count like? We got 24 black cards. And like, what, 19? 19 blue cards? So I think Delver of Secrets is better than Stalactite Stalker in this deck, is kind of where I'm feeling this now. Pyroblasts, you don't see as many Pyroblasts as you did once upon a time. And you certainly don't see the main deck Pyroblast like you used to. And Pyroblast pointed at your Delver aren't getting pointed at your Murktide. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Yeah, I think we should be running Delver instead of Stalactite Stalker. That's kind of my takeaway from this. We should just be running like the old Josh Layton. I'm pretty sure it was Josh Layton. His style of Death Shadow deck from like, I want to say 10 years ago, but it might be longer. I'm not sure. It's been a while. But that's kind of where I'm feeling on this at the moment. It doesn't feel like we have enough stuff to make this a reliable 3-power attacker. And is Menace better than Flying? They're kind of similar. The ability on this to kill stuff is definitely good, but how often is it going to be able to kill stuff? I don't know. What I do like is the fact that you can use it to just kill an Orcish Bowmaster while it's in play, even if it hasn't got any counters on. That is pretty interesting. I do like the Street Wraith into Reanimate. Like, we're running Street Wraith here because they synergize with Stalactite Stalker, but I think Street Wraith is also just fine as a thing you can be doing in this deck. It doesn't die to Lightning Bolt when you reanimate it. It hits your Light Tail nicely to get Death Shadows going really early, which is something that I've struggled with in some of the other Death Shadow builds where you don't actually get your Death Shadow as a thing you can play until sometimes like turn 4 or 5. You're trying to get your Shadow down, and that doesn't feel great, whereas this felt pretty nice to me. We did pretty well. This is obviously one of my styles of decks I like to play. You know, I play Turbo Depths. I like sort of combo-y, like combo control style decks. You know, I used to play Twin a lot in Legacy, and I'm really enjoying the Food Chain, and I've almost finished building it in paper. I think that deck's really good. But the other deck that I like to play a lot of is Delver Tempo style. So, you know, I'm a big Canadian Threshold Rug Delver type player. So I like restricting my opponent's resources and trying to cross the line with some creatures and things. And I think this plays a lot more like that than traditional Death Shadow decks do. You know, we're making our guys, we're doing our stuff, and we can actually clock our opponent a lot quicker than regular Shadow. Deck obviously felt good. 4 on record is pretty decent. We were, you know, within grasping distance of the 5-0. Now, we did get a little bit lucky against some of the Goblin decks, but I think that's still fine. We definitely have the tools to beat it. And yeah, my main takeaway from this, I think, is definitely Stalactite Stalker. I think this card is good. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a good card. I don't think this is the shell for it, weirdly. I think I would rather play Delver. It gives us more reliable Force of Wills. Like, we definitely had hands where we couldn't cast our Force of Will because we didn't have another blue card. So it gives us more Force of Will cards. And it's more likely to flip. And it can attack for 3 on turn 2, which is more than this guy can. And this guy requires you to do the thing twice. And we've got less than a third of the cards in our deck do the thing on this, right? Yeah, so we've got 19 cards to enable this. And we need to have basically 3 of those in order for this to be better than a Delver on average. So unless you're really into the removal side of this, which, don't get me wrong, is definitely a thing that we might be interested in, I think Delver might just be better. We could always like split it and try it that way. But this makes me want to play a Death Shadow build from back in the day with Delvers again. Although what I will also say is, if you're just trying to kill little creatures with this, we kind of have that covered with Orcish Bowmasters, which is a better card. So this is just going to be able to kill little things a lot more reliably, and also have some really nice stuff on it. Like, this is 2 mana, this is 4 mana total. So this is going to be more expedient, and it's going to have some extra utility on it in terms of messing with your opponent's draws. Obviously, Stalactite Stalker can attack for more. Orcish Bowmasters isn't a great threat, but that's why I'm thinking Delver, because that is a pretty viable threat. So, yeah, it's definitely some some thoughts on this one. And all of our mana taps for blue anyway, and we have a basic island in our deck, which does make the Delver slightly better. When I say in our deck, I mean our 75, which does make the Delver slightly better in some situations as well. But yeah, I really enjoy playing this deck. I do like this deck. If I didn't have to sell my Underground Seas for money, then this would definitely be a thing that I have ready to play whenever it came to it, because I do think this is the best. This is the best iteration of Death Shadow I've played for a while. I think this is really solid. I think the last couple of times I played Death Shadow, I have 4-1'd as well, but this just felt more solid and felt more proactive, which is where I want to be in the format right now. Sideboard, Powder Keg. We didn't really play the matchups of the Powder Kegs 4, so that's fair enough. I'm not a big fan of Hullbreacher. I understand why it's in there. Orcish Bowmasters kind of does a similar thing, and 3 mana didn't always feel the easiest. It was a little bit trickier to get to 3 mana than I thought it would be. And maybe some removal for bigger stuff might be useful. We have a push, and sometimes something like a Plague Engineer is interesting to me as well. But, you know, I think the slots here are fine. There's not really a problem with them. There's been a few lists that have been 5-0ing with this sideboard. Some of them are playing Hearse instead of Nihil Spellbomb. But this, pretty much this exact 75 with 1 card different has taken like 4 or 5 5-0s in the last couple of weeks at least. So it's clearly a real deck, but my take is that maybe Delver is the way forward. Alright, thank you very much for watching and listening to my ramblings about how much I like playing Delver in Death Shadow. It's about time, and I'll certainly be trying that out later on. Can't quite say when, but I'm looking forward to jamming it. Alright, remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my content, and also it helps me out, which is important. And yeah, just thank you so much for watching and joining me on my videos. It means a lot to me that people watch my content, and you know, I'm hoping by the end of this year I can have this as a minimum wage-ish type job, doing content, which would be nice. But either way, I just love playing Legacy, so it's something I'm hoping to keep up anyway. Alright, this was a great one, so thanks for watching again, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.